Greg, it's great to be here with you. Looking at the multifamily market first, one of the things we've seen is, the great exodus that sort of has been labeled in the press of people leaving the city. It really was much more complex than that. It wasn't just people, millennials, leaving the city for the suburbs, although that did happen. They did come of age, and the pandemic accelerated their demand for larger spaces and single family homes so they could do the work from home environment. But what we also saw happen was the Cleveland Fed did a great study on this in terms of the loss of people coming into cities was really a loss of in-migration of young people, everything from foreign students to young people coming into the cities to work into offices. Of course, those people who were hired during the pandemic and worked from home, they were working from home of their parents all over the country. And so you didn't have that major inflow that you usually do. And that really left a lot of particularly luxury space with foreign students and foreigners coming into our major metropolitan areas, the big cities, the coastal hubs like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York. They really saw this softening in the multifamily market as it shifted a bit to some of the suburban markets and some of the second-tier markets. Now, what we're starting to see is a return of, most importantly, young people coming back for in-person classes. And those in-person classes in major metropolitan areas are bringing students back in and young people back in. Also, the reopening of offices is meaning that young people are starting to show up back in these major cities. So the rents that had plummeted during the crisis are now in the major metropolitan areas, the largest metropolitan areas, beginning to firm with less of the giveaways, 3 months free rent. And some of the most popular properties actually are being snapped up in minutes as sort of people start to come back to some of these major metropolitan areas. But even within the metropolitan areas, it differs dramatically by neighborhood. Areas where there are large educational institutions, where they're going to do in-person classes fully vaccinated, they're seeing much more of a resurgence than areas where the offices are a lot more spotty. In the multifamily market, zoning is an issue in some of these major cities, and so you've seen it spread out to second-tier cities and into suburbs, and I would think you'd be picking up some of that as well.
Absolutely, and yes, we see that. Our clients have complained, the skilled workforce, finding people to work, trying to continue the construction pattern, considering it's changed their estimates considerably. The material costs have continued to climb. However, we have seen them start to move down a little bit. But again, I think there's still some major concern with some of our larger multifamily clients, investors, owner-operators. But right now, you can't find enough units. And I think as the young people are getting more excited about going back to work, going back to their offices. So now the focus is the number of units. Can they finish their construction that they started? Costs have changed. But again, it's very difficult right now to find the companies to complete on target.
Lumber prices have come off their highs and finally are back down, but a lot of those companies bought lumber earlier in the cycle, and what's priced into, what they're dealing with are the prices that already were, not the forward contracts for September. So that is something that, it's part of the inflation aspect of the economy that is bottlenecks, and it is working its way out, but it takes a while. And that means longer lingering flare in inflation and flare in cost issues for many people to deal with than many had hoped as we reopen.
With the multifamily space, though, what's interesting is it's right now with the valuations so high with the single family homes and it being so cheap to get into the multifamily space. Again, I think that's only going to help our clients. That's only going to help the multifamily industry continue to grow, expand, and stay hot. Make the valuation stay strong. Is right now it's more. It costs more than ever to go out and buy that single family home, even in New York City or wherever. But the multifamily, where you're having free rent, some incentives, it's changed the game a bit and made multifamily stay strong and hot, really, across the U.S.
Many first-time buyers are being crowded out and opting into those rental alternatives, which I think is a really important point. When millennials moved out of some of these major metropolitan areas, the tracking of the zip codes, which the Cleveland Fed looked at, was that they didn't go very far out of Chicago, out of New York, out of San Francisco. They didn't move into the hinterland to never come back, although they do want to have a lot of flexibility flexibility in terms of how they do business going forward. They want to be able to work more from home, although not be, sort of destined to only work from home. They want hybrid options. They want a lot of flexibility. The surveys on this have been fairly strong.
We're seeing a lot of the work from home force going back to work. We see a lot more office openings. Our clients are telling us that there's more people coming back to the big cities. There's more people coming into the offices now. So we're seeing a lot of that type of activity, as you just explained. The one thing that I have noticed, and we continue to hear as well, that some of those cities that moving from the Rust Belt to the Sun Belt, the people are staying where they're at though. What we're seeing now is even where, the Nashville, the Charlottes, the Austin, Texas, the places like that continue to be very popular. The job market's very strong. And then the young people, as far as like the educated professionals, are very attracted to those cities. But I will tell you, with New York and San Francisco, Chicago, we're starting to see, the rents and whatnot come back. We're starting to see the occupancy go up. We're starting to see those incentives go away. We expect, as we move closer to the fall, more to the winter, that the major big cities will be back in their offices. And I think the work from home has already dropped half since May of last year. So I expect that to continue.
In pointing out the work from home, back in May of last year, about over 30% of the American workforce, according to the national government statistics on this, when they survey people, they actually have special questions on the employment survey. Are you actually, sort of working from home right now, as they added that in for the pandemic? It was over 30%, and now it's below 15%. That's a pretty big movement, and the biggest declines have been in the last sort of 4 to 5 months, as companies have tried to sort of move back into the cities, and I think and reopen some offices. I do think that is really interesting. The other issue that's interesting is the cities you noted, the Charlottes, the Austin, Texas. Some of these what were second-tier cities are also now tech hubs. So they're areas that you see the agglomeration, the concentration of the tech sector, which means it's going to be very expensive areas very rapidly. They already are. Charlotte's been seeing extraordinary run-up, so is Austin, so is part of Idaho as well, where they've had this sort of tech run-up. And so it's really being driven by the same industries that sort of drove it in the first-tier cities are now driving it in the second-tier cities. What are the firms doing on Wall Street? What are the tech firms doing? Tech firms are snapping up and have been for a while now, since the beginning of the year, before we even fully got to vaccinations picking up and things like that. They've been snapping up this downtown office space because they want to do everything they can to make sure their people are in the office, because that's and collaborating and innovating together, because they need that collaboration to get the extra special sauce you get. Some of that was lost in translation by the move to work from home. Some smaller firms that are younger firms that can now afford a downtown office space and be nearer those sort of tech giants. That's an agglomeration, sort of the collection of industries that makes things really kind of an area buzz. What I worry about is the delineation between medium and larger businesses and then smaller businesses. Those businesses that can really leverage that technology and that acceleration in technology, they're getting productivity growth, and they're able to absorb some of the shock of the frictions we're seeing in the labor market and the fact that workers have a little bit of time in the sun, where smaller businesses, which are an important part of dynamism in the U.S. economy, are being left out in the cold.
Maybe a year ago, we were talking about reducing our footprint. We were utilizing technology. We were working from home. We were working, efficiently at home, keeping costs down. We were more profitable. But what we've learned was, is we couldn't measure productivity. We were losing the culture of our organization. Were we having those face-to-face interactions? Were we having those training sessions? And were we creating loyalty with our teams? And so now I believe the conversations have kind of turned a little bit, Diane, to where maybe we need to open up our office. Maybe we need to reconsider our footprint. Maybe we need to stick with what we have. and try to get back to maybe a flexible work arrangement where we're in the office a couple of days. We have space for collaboration, etc. The tech companies are going to continue taking up space. I think the services industry is going to continue taking up space. And I think the buildings are going to continue to gain more value. But again, I think you're exactly right. There's still a lot of dynamics that we're working through, but I think our clients are really starting to value the interaction, the face-to-face interaction, the building a positive culture in the organization, all believing that helps growth at the end of the day. Anything supporting the digital economy has just been overwhelming for the past year or so. So what have you seen? What do you hear? What's your take on that as we move forward?
The bottom line is there is that online business, I think, is still going to be, it's now a much more solid and even more a fixed part of our economy than ever before. And it's that combination of, the supply being expanded and every retailer out there making sure they've got that online presence and they can do it right, not sort of do it in a way that's not as efficient as it once was. On the other, and curbside delivery, people are also, they're also skipping the warehouses in some places and doing the curbside delivery and maintaining that going forward as well. It was interesting, one major retailer actually found out that was cheaper for them than doing the shipping, is having people, get it right from the store, and even shipping it right from the store that's closest to them. So that's another interesting way that store retailers are reshaping their models. But this is a permanent shift, and it's a shift that, although it won't be at the growth pace that we saw clearly during the pandemic, it is now a part of our lives in a way that we couldn't have imagined it would be today pre-pandemic. The adoption of these technologies and the fact that everybody knows how to use them, and then the next iteration of it is how well we get things at last mile, and the efficiencies we're seeing there by the largest behemoths out there, that is going to be a permanent part of our lives.